We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. If you're watching the YouTube version, Tom is a logo once again, and we have been having all kinds of technical difficulties behind the scenes, so hopefully this is like a viable episode. We'll see.
I think I will get my computer back before next week. I think it will not be completely fixed, but I will be able to get the few things I haven't stored in Dropbox off of it, including some episodes of AVRant and the edit file that I use. And then I'll be able to transfer it to hopefully a different, newer, not broken laptop. But we will see.
That would be good. That would be ideal.
They do have it running. It was funny because, I said I told you guys what happened. You know, the screen just kind of never came back on, blah, blah, blah. Well, I took it in. I said, yeah, it's, I explained to them what happened. I opened it up and the screen was on. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And then, it went it went berserk and the colors went all crazy. I was like, okay, well, that's fine. And I left it there and they're like, yeah, we reseated the cable or whatever the connection is between the monitor and or the screen and the motherboard or whatever it is. And then, but if you touch if you try to pick it up, if you touch the case, it wigs out. So we're going to order a new one, a new cable or whatever that is. I don't know what it is. And then if that doesn't work, then it's something. I'm like, but if I don't touch it, it'll work. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, at least if you can get it to do that, then I will have.
That's enough to at least transfer off the files that you need. That's the bare minimum. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what we're going for around here, Rob. The bare minimum.
Is there any chance you could connect your laptop into an external monitor?
I mean, there's probably a chance of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? I could not. It was doing all kinds of weird stuff. He said he had it running, so whatever.
Okay.
In other news from Tom, all you people who sent me things and said, hey, Tom's going to have this home theater set up in a day. No, he did not. Right? But after months of living here and being in denial that we were going to figure something out and then be able to move back in kind of quickly. My wife finally decided that she's had enough of not having a TV. And then my computer broke, so we wouldn't have a laptop to watch anything on.
Right, yeah.
So she's like, okay, that's enough of this nonsense. Let's get the TV set up. So she found a piece of furniture that she was happy with that is completely inappropriate for putting AV gear in. And in no way will it accommodate anything. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I bought we have an LG TV, LCD something or another. I don't know what that is.
55-incher, right? Something like that?
I think it is a 55, yeah. It's quite heavy, so I don't know, it's older. There's I was pointing stuff out to my wife. I'm like, yeah, you see how in the corners it's dim? That's always a good sign.
Vignetting.
But so we got it, and it didn't have a remote with it, but I have a Harmony, but let's not get to that yet. So I bought a stand for it, and Rob suggested one, and I was like, I want one that if I decide to get a monster TV later, I can still use it with that.
Yeah.
So I got one that'll hold 125 pounds from where did I get it? Sanus, yeah. We started off with one from, I think, Peerless, and then ordered it from someplace, and they said, in 2 to 4 weeks, it'll be in stock. I'm like, you have lost your damn mind. I'm canceling this order right now. So
and there is an avoiding Amazon orders going on here for anyone who's like, what, you couldn't just order one from Amazon? So that is also going on.
Currently lining the pockets of Jeff Bezos with all of my money. Yes, I realize that I am still linking up Amazon links in my articles at AV Gadgets.
Some of my recommendations later today, the links will still be going to Amazon.
But you're welcome to find them wherever you find them. So I paid a little bit more and got it from Best Buy, and also got cyber power thing, so I can have all my computers all hooked up at the same time, and
surge
also
protector and battery backup.
Yeah, battery backup. So this weekend I got the monitor set up. I mean the TV set up. I got the NAD receiver connected, and 2 of the KEF speakers, and I was like, I'm like, I could buy speaker stands, and they just barely fit on the sides of the TV if I kind of squeeze them in there.
And having that adjustable height on the new TV stand came in handy, I'm sure.
So instead of buying speaker stands, which was not going to, I'm just like, I don't want to buy speaker stands. I just put them, the little table that she bought has on 3 sides has a lip, an edge, whatever. I don't know why it's there, but it makes it so you can't hang anything over the side of the thing. This is what I needed. So instead, what I did is I grabbed a couple of books, which somebody had given us. They're like, "Do you want any books?" I'm like, "No, but whatever. Give me your books." So I got all these Michael Connolly books. I guess one of the writers in the St. Pete Bicycle Club, who passed away, not from getting run over by a car, which is usually how people in this bicycle group pass away. But he just died of natural causes. He had these books, and they got passed down to another guy, and he's like, I read them all, so you want them? I'm like, that's fine. I mean, there's a lot of them. They're all the Reacher books, is what they are. So I found 2. I was like, I need to elevate these speakers, the KEF speakers a little bit, so I can hang them over the edge. And plus, I don't want them on a hard surface, so I just put them on $2.
Okay.
1 each. And they're lying on their side underneath. It is a mono experience.
Right. Are you okay with me showing that photo that you sent me?
That's fine. It's hey, this is I am living the college lifestyle right now. Okay. If you don't look at this and go, that looks like me in college, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's back to the old Frankenstein system cobbled together days. It's a throwback.
That's right. It's stereo living. So we hooked up the Apple TV 4K. We hooked up the NAD receiver, and we hooked up the TV. That's all we've got hooked up right now in the KEF speakers, obviously, the 2 KEF speakers. I still have the Triad bronze ones for surrounds, but that's just not going to happen. There was no room for them right now. We'll maybe work that out later. But the funny thing is I hooked everything up. And I remember when I was hooking it up, I was kind of on autopilot and getting distracted by things and not really paying attention. And I was like, did I connect the speaker cables correctly on the back of the... I probably did.
Left to right, right to left?
I've done this so many times. There's no way I messed it up. And then I turned everything on. I was like, man, the voices all sound like they're coming from the left side. And then I got closer, like I put my head right between them. I'm like, yeah, he's coming from the left side. And then when I turned my head to look at the left side, all of a sudden he popped into the right. I was like, something weird's going on here. I looked at I had wired one of the speakers out of phase.
Yeah.
So I was like,
black to red, red to black.
Well, yeah, because I just found some speaker cable that I had, like that was probably flooded, but I cut off the ends. I'm sure the PVC cable is the outside is fine. So I'm gonna go buy some banana plugs so that I don't have to deal with this nonsense anymore. And some real cables. I do have one nice speaker cable that lived. And, I mean, I have a box of HDMI cables because they were all still in the bags. I told you guys about that. But they were still in the bags for mono price, and a bunch of HDMI cables are in there. And they all survived because they were in bags and they were sealed. Except for the really long ones, which had holes in the bags for whatever reason.
The expensive ones,
The expensive ones, and all the fiber optic, whatever. So I ended up, I have all these HDMI cables, but one speaker cable. It's got like, I think it's got banana plugs on one side and spades on the other, and it's from SVS.
Okay.
So but one speaker cable doesn't do you a whole lot of good. So I'm gonna make it a little bit nicer one of these days. But
and for anyone who did see the image there, that is the epitome of stereo separation going on there.
Hey, even from like 9 feet away, I could still go, something's wrong with the sound. Why does it sound so weird? Yeah. Out of phase. We were like, I don't know if my speakers are out of phase or not. You will, if you pay any attention, you will know. So the next thing I did, of course, was I started watching stuff immediately and thought, well, this looks bad. Whoever owned this TV before me did not ever set anything up properly.
Sounds like a reasonable guess.
But I had no remote control, so I was like, well, I don't know. I guess I'll just have to live with it like this. And then, of course, I'm me, so I can't just do that. And I went to the front of the TV, and I'm like, okay, where is there any buttons on here? There's one button, and this LG TV is got like a little button/joystick thing.
Yep.
Which works really well. And I went through and I found the ratings, whatever, like for a similar TV that had almost the exact same number.
Okay, all right.
Instead of like an LP something, a 55 LP 6100, I think is what this is, or 6400 or something like that. It was like an LF. I'm like, that's got to be the same thing. Close enough. And just went through and did all their settings. And I was like, yeah, it looks a lot better now. It's not nearly as good as the OLED.
I wouldn't think so.
People's hair are big black blobs. It's just
sounds
it's
about
like,
right.
I think they have strands in there somewhere.
Getting all the shadow detail on that old LCD. Yeah, I mean, it's an LG, so that is almost certainly an IPS with its 900:1 maximum contrast ratio. So
yeah, it's it's brutal. But it's way better than it had dynamic contrast turned on, so we'd be watching it, and all of a sudden it would be super bright, and then it would dim down. I'm just like, what is happening? My wife's like, that's just probably how they filmed it. I'm like, that is not
unlikely.
That is not how they.
No, as long as you got it to unoffensive. then
yes, that's where we are. We're at unoffensive, and it's so much nicer having a real TV and sound.
Right? Yeah.
Oh my God,
it is superior to a laptop for watching.
So here I am with one source.
Yep.
Going through a receiver.
Ah, yes.
To a TV. So what's my solution for control?
One would think that if you have any remote for any of those devices, we know you don't have the TV remote, but say the Apple TV 4K remote should be able to power everything on together via HDMI CEC.
And it can, and it does, and it works. And I after playing around, because none of these settings make any dang sense. I've been doing this a while, and I'm like, I don't know if I should turn that on or not. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. It doesn't sound right. It sounds weird. So I'm going through it, and NAD's menus, the menu system in the NAD is just atrocious. None of the buttons work the way you think they should. Like if you click on something, it's like, oh, you just wanted to shift down? Good. Now I know. I'm like, no. I clicked on it. I pressed the middle button. That should change it. And they're like, up is changing it. I'm like, not left or right? Nope. That is not it. What does the back button do? Nothing. I'm like, what?
Intuitive user interface.
Oh my God, it's so bad. But you get used to it after just a little bit. So I went through and I changed. I got all these settings. I can get everything to work the way you want, except the LG TV will not turn off. It just won't. Yeah. It won't do it. It refuses.
Yeah.
It turns on just fine, but it won't turn itself off. It overall, I mean, I like being able to control everything. The little Apple remote, which is, I am terrified of letting my wife touch it because she loses stuff. And I mean, she's got a little touch of the ADHD, and she just, when she's done with something, she throws it over her head, and it just lands wherever it lands.
Yeah, that is an easily losable remote, all right. Although you're supposed to be able to do the thing where it like chirps at you, I think. If you lose
Good luck with us setting that up, since I don't have if I had an iPhone, I would have already had it set up.
Yeah, oh yeah, it might require an iPhone or an iPad.
She has an iPhone.
Okay,
but again, she doesn't have her phone connected to her car because she doesn't like the way that sometimes it'll just start playing music. I'm like, you can turn that off. She's like, yeah, I'm just not going to connect it to the car. I'm like, do you just drive around in silence like a sociopath? And she's like, well, yeah, because I don't want to listen to the news, and I don't really like any of the music on. I'm like, you just drive in silence. in silence.
Yep.
Like, how can you? Like, I can't be alone with my thoughts for that long. Have you lost your mind?
Hearing the wind whistle along outside, the noises of the road.
So yes, we have TV here now.
Okay.
And I as of this weekend, so this is Tuesday, I got it set up on Saturday and stopped really playing with it. Well, let's be honest with you, I played with it a little bit yesterday too, but mostly on Sunday I got done messing with the settings and on the TV and doing that sort of thing. I'm still gonna jigger around with it, trying to figure out if I can get the TV to turn off with the Apple remote.
Yep.
But overall, I mean, this is HDMI CC, right? I mean, I've been railing against it for years, and I said the only time it really works is when you have one source going to one display through one receiver. And for the most part, it works okay. Except it doesn't always.
Right. Yeah.
So that's that.
Well, it's a good reminder. You know, how dare anyone else ask settings questions, perhaps even repeatedly. I know. Now we know. It's good to get that reminder sometimes.
I'm just like, why doesn't this make any sense? Like, why do these settings, like, I think on the NAD, there's like, you can have HDMI do stuff, right? Or the CC do stuff. Mm-hmm. And one of them's like auto, which you would think would be the one to go to, but that definitely didn't work. It didn't turn the TV on at all. And then one of them was like, you could turn power on and off. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know what does that mean? How does that work? Does that mean that, I don't know. And then one of them source, like you can have the source.
Yeah.
Be the
automatically
control.
Changes to the source. Yeah.
Yeah. And you would think I wouldn't need a lot of that stuff because I'm like, I only got the one source. So you don't need to change the source ever. Mm-hmm. Like that's just, but if I didn't put the source one on, the TV just whatever.
Right. It's not getting the signal through. Yeah.
And then it wouldn't turn the TV on for a while, and I think I had to change the power one for that. I don't really remember, but it's just none of people are like, I don't understand why home AV people have a problem with AV. It's so easy. You know when it's easy? When you do it all manually. Like you don't let it do anything.
Yeah, to this day, many people, when they ask for a universal remote, they want the type where I choose on this remote I'm holding to be controlling my TV and my TV alone right now. And I'm going to do what I need to do there. And then I choose that I am now controlling my AV receiver and my AV receiver alone, and I do what I need to do there. And then I choose what source I want, and I control only that. That's what many people still have in mind and genuinely want their universal remote control to be. And you know what? For that, the Sofabaton U2 is a fantastic choice. That's exactly how it works, and it's great. And it can even do the thing where the volume keys always control, say, only the AV receiver, like the punch through, so that no matter what device you've selected, that's what it controls. So that's a great choice, and it doesn't cost very much for people who genuinely want that type of control. And I can totally get on board with it. It's like, if that's the way your mind works and that makes sense to you, then why spend more? Why make it more complicated? I can totally get on board with doing that.
Yeah. So I didn't really watch anything. We started, I was mostly watching YouTube just so I would have something on in the background as I was messing with settings. But then I didn't trust YouTube because who knows how they film crap. So then I went to, I think Netflix or one of those to watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, because I was like, whatever, I can have that in the background. I know nobody's gonna be mad. And that, I still have some settings to play with. I think I'd like to bump up the backlight a little bit because I would like to see some contrast.
That'd be nice.
Some of these things.
Some shadow detail.
Overall, the TV, I mean, considering someone just gave it to me.
Right.
Overall, the TV is really nice. I'm actually quite surprised. And this is the thing. If you're going from, just another cheap LCD TV to this TV.
Right.
I mean, not only is it, people are like, oh, well, I just get the next bigger one up because I want a bigger TV, and they all look the same. They do when you pay a certain amount. They all look the same. And people are like, well, I'm not going to really notice the difference anyways. You absolutely will notice the difference. Like, an OLED that is properly calibrated and set up.
Or a higher end mini LED full array local dimming LCD. That genuinely does look different and looks a lot closer to OLED than not.
Yeah. And then you will absolutely look at that and go, oh.
I mean, some people don't. I don't understand it, but some people don't.
I can't believe that if they paid any attention at all, that they couldn't see.
Some people can never tell the difference when the frame interpolation soap opera effect is on versus off. It makes no difference to them. So,
So what did you watch, Rob, while I wasn't watching anything?
Well, just before we get to that segment, I just wanted to quickly say intro on my side that I have voted in our federal election over here. We had our early voting, which was over the 4-day Easter weekend. That just lined up with when the final election day is going to be on the 28th. But I was happy to see in our Canadian news that reports are the turnout across the country for early voting was way higher than in prior elections. So I take that as a good sign. People are engaged, people are paying attention, and I like that people are exercising their civic duty and going out there and voting. So I hope that continues all the way through and that we have a record turnout for our federal election. We'll see how it all plays out on the 28th. So there we go.
Oh, what? You guys won't know until then?
Well, that is the actual election day, what was going on.
Oh, so you're early voting, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, okay, it was early access voting. So, but yeah, record turnouts so far, all the way across the country. So, yeah, happy to see that. All right. Next segment.
I already said, what do you watch?
All right. So, I didn't make it all the way through the movie that I was watching this weekend, just purely for time. So I have watched like the first half, basically, of Nickel Boys, because this is another one of the Best Picture nominees for this past year's Oscars, and I'm just kind of making my way through all of the Best Picture nominees. So, yeah, obviously, I can't render a full verdict or review, having really only seen the first half of it, but it is interesting immediately because it is shot in first-person perspective. So we're first following this young character of Elwood. So this is set in early 1960s in Florida. We've got John F. Kennedy is like recently president, and Martin Luther King Jr. His speeches are being televised, and so this is civil rights movement, and so we're following mainly the story of two young black men, or they're 16, 17, so they're still boys, and so the main character of Elwood, who we're literally seeing the movie through his eyes. So, when we see his face, it's like via reflections and things like that. It's like a point of view thing? Yeah, it's an absolute first person perspective. Yeah. Oh. What's interesting character wise is that, and I could maybe level a little bit of a criticism here, but they set him up to be like sort of the nicest of the nice and the bestest of the best and the absolute least trouble-causing person that there could possibly be. He spends all his time reading. He, doesn't speak to very many other people. He never, pokes his head out, never does a bad thing whatsoever. But that's to set up the massive contrast of, because he's such a good student, because his teacher really likes him, gets him enrolled in a new technical university that's set up still within Florida, but kind of far away. He's in Tallahassee to begin with. And gets him set up there tuition free. And so he's just trying to make his way there. He doesn't have any vehicle or can't even afford a bus ticket. So he's just hitchhiking his way there and gets picked up by this very friendly character. But it turns out that guy had stolen the car that he picks him up in. And so when they get pulled over, they just automatically assume that Elwood is his accomplice. There's, we're talking 1960s, two young black men in this stolen car. And so there's, no any sort of defense or anything like that. So he gets sent off to a correctional, juvenile quote-unquote school, but really it's like a forced labor camp for underage kids, and they're telling them that, if you follow the rules and you don't make any trouble, then you'll go up the ranks and you'll be let out of here. You get to decide how long you stay here, is what they're told, but it goes, nobody ever gets to leave before they're 18 years old, and he's like 16 at this time. So
right.
He meets another character, and we actually shift person's perspective when we make the second character of Turner, and we end up seeing the movie through Turner's eyes for a time, and then it shifts back and forth. But it's always first-person perspective, and we're either seeing it through Elwood's eyes or through Turner's eyes. So yeah, I haven't seen the end of the movie yet. I can't render a verdict. It is a little bit of a slow burn that goes on through this first half, but it is certainly compelling from the unique camera perspective, and then just the story in general. Like I say, it's like, is Elwood would I believe in real life that, there's someone this innocent who's absolutely never ever done a thing wrong? It's not completely unbelievable, but it was maybe gilding the lily a little bit, in making him so completely innocent. But that is, of course, to set up the juxtaposition of everything that happens to him once he ends up in this correctional school. So the Nickel Academy. So that's why it's called Nickel Boys. So anyway, I'll be back next week to render the full review and the full verdict. But it is a compelling movie for sure, right from the get-go. And then, other thing I watched this week, I've watched the first half of the fourth and now final season of Mythic Quest over on Apple TV+. This is, it seems like they're still at the video game company, but that is like really in the background of things now. It's like it's really just following the interpersonal relationships of the main characters and almost completely forgetting about the video game side of things at this point in the show. So they also did 4 completely separate self-contained side quest episodes. So season 4 does not contain a carve-out episode that doesn't contain any of the main characters. They did that in the first 3 seasons. All first 3 seasons had a singular episode in the middle of the season that didn't include any of the main cast except for maybe a tiny little tag at the very, very end, and told some other story within this universe. But they decided in the 4th and final season that they aren't going to do that as part of the main season, but then they have these 4 standalone side quest episodes that I'm looking forward to seeing later on. So that's what I watched this week, along with NHL playoffs. Those have begun, even though the Vancouver Canucks were eliminated and are not part of the playoffs. All of Canada always cheers for the Montreal Canadiens if they are in the playoffs. And they are this year, so that's the team I'm cheering for. Although I'm cheering for the Winnipeg Jets as well, because have they ever won a Stanley Cup? Gosh, I can't even remember. I'm a terrible Canadian for not remembering, but I don't think they ever have, or if they have, it's been ages and ages and ages. So I don't mind cheering for them as well. That's me.
Very exciting.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think I want to say any of that, though. I was just thinking about, so I'm not going to do
it.
it.
Well, that's fine. We're well into this podcast, so we can get going.
All right, let's absolutely get going. I do have a dentist appointment I have to go to today, so it's going to be
okay.
It's going to be. I'm not sure how long I'm going to be here. So this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to the website to find our shows, show notes, Flickr albums to follow along with the pictures, as well as any links to products that we will be mentioning or articles that we'll be mentioning, and older shows. So that if you want to listen to something that we said a long time ago, literally 900 plus episodes ago, you can hear me be probably wrong about something that is totally not. I just said something like, I think I mentioned that last week. Somebody commented on like a 2-year-old article on the AV gadgets. I'm like, well, that's not the way that works. I'm like, well, so if you want to contact us, well, let me see, avrant.com. There's facebook.com/avrant podcast, youtube.com/avrant. That's you can see the pictures that we'll be talking about if you don't want to follow along with the Flickr album. Rob is rob@avrant.com. His socials is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. Listeners of the Week. To become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you do that is go to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and send us a PayPal donation. This week, we want to thank Bill for doing that. Thank you very much, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, thank you so much for that PayPal donation. We very much appreciate your financial support.
If you want to support us monthly, go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast and become one of our patrons. We have 133 patrons right now, including Michael. Thank you very much.
That's right. That is patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thanks to our 133 patrons over there. Michael, thank you for being one of them.
If you can't support us financially, we completely understand, especially in these, whatever tariff war we're currently in.
Oh, yes.
Whatever reason. I don't know why we're so mad at Canadians. Why we insisted on tariffing you. Like it's like when your big brother puts you in a headlock for no freaking reason. And you're like, what did I do? I was just sitting here. I wasn't doing anything.
It's not an exaggeration to say that the justification seems to be that the United States, with its population that is 10 times the size of Canada's, that the United States buys more from Canada than Canada buys from the United States. Now, how could that be with 10 times as many people?
Math is hard.
That seems to be the justification for needing to tariff us.
So if you can't support us financially, then you do something to support us. Let us know what it is. Michael wrote to, I don't know if it's the same Michael from the Patreon, but Michael wrote to RSL to tell them that we were his primary reason for buying his speedwoofer subwoofers from them. One of the subs had a malfunctioning amp, but RSL was prompt and courteous and really stood behind their product, so the issue was quickly resolved at no extra cost to Michael. And he's glad to know that in addition to great products, RSL also provides great customer service. That's better than Garmin. Maybe pay for a replacement for their stupid thing that they knew was broken. Their Varia radar thing was broken, and they go like, "Oh, is this what's wrong with your radar?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's it. Here, give us $100." Like, what? It's broken. You know it's broken. You have a button for it. How broken it is. So better than Garmin. Thank you, RSL, and thank you, Michael.
Yes, well, yeah, Michael, thank you for talking us up to RSL. We very much appreciate that. And I'd love to hear that. We know that they're good folks over there, but we always love to hear stories of good customer service when people are happy. And he's like, yep, that makes me a loyal customer, and that's exactly the reason to do it. So good on them.
So Justin sent in 19 Movies Anywhere codes for us to test out. I didn't get that email. Rob's hoarding that one.
It went to your Tom at avrant.com, so I'll have to forward it to you.
I actually have access to that now, and I must have deleted it. So you're going to have to resend it to me.
I will forward it along.
I went looking for it when I saw that on the thing. Okay. I was like, Justin, we will test those out for you and let you know which ones work and which ones don't. That is a service we provide.
Movies Anywhere does not function in Canada, so that's going to be all Tom.
I hooked everything up except for Twitch to the Apple TV 4K, and then I was like, here's all the apps we use. It's all along the top. Mm-hmm. And she goes, well, what's that one down there underneath? I'm like, that's Fandango at Home, Voodoo. Well, what do we have on that? I'm like, a bunch of movies. She's like, where do we get all these movies from? Like, listen, how many times have we're going to go through this? This is not the first time we've had this conversation. We're about to have 19 more, maybe. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would never keep them. I'm just testing the codes.
Some of those might be duplicates from times before. Yeah, I think I recognized a couple on there, but some of them were definitely had never been sent before.
Great. So notes of gratitude we got this week from people who are like, thank you for not giving up, even though your computer dies and your house and apartments get flooded. Mm-hmm. We are all about the water around here.
We are.
Nelson Kerry says he appreciates the work we put into podcasts, and he's the no-nonsense advice that we offer for free. He swears he's a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club, yet he cannot remember any of the secret words, which means you are not. Sorry. That's how it works.
I mean, I can understand, you're listening in the car or elsewhere, and it's like you get to the end, and you're like, yeah, that went by, but it just did not stick in the memory. So
that's fine.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, Kerry. I believe you probably listen to the 2 hours most, if not every week.
The Canadians being understanding, and the Americans like, sucks to suck.
You've got a listening deficit.
Graeme, Alan, Brian. Brian hopes we're both in good health with dry floors and happy families. Dry floors, knock on something. Sebastian says he found us on YouTube a few months ago and likes our podcast a lot. Henry and Sasi. So we got Nelson, Kerry, Graeme, Alan, Brian, Sebastian, Henry, and Sasi. Thank you for thanking us.
That's right, and I'll say the names one more time. That's Nelson, Kerry, Graeme, Alan, Brian, Sebastian, Henry, and Sasi. Thank you all very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. We definitely appreciate them, and a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
In the news, excuse me. I had a little heartburn there for a second. Sorry, guys. Kaleidescape announced that it has joined the 8K Association, which is a not-for-profit organization whose mission is to accelerate industry-wide adoption of 8K content, products, and services, and includes such members as Samsung, Panasonic, Hisense, and TCL. Kaleidescape CEO says that, quote, I don't want this to sound like it's coming from us. Quote, as consumers demand larger screens, higher fidelity, and increasingly immersive experiences, I'm not going to say it. Kaleidescape's involvement in the 8K Association will play a pivotal role in shaping the future of premium home cinema, end frickin' quote. Mm-hmm. No 8K product roadmap or announcement of 8K resolution movies in the Kaleidescape store was made, but they said they are committed to, quote, pushing the boundaries of home entertainment and ensuring Kaleidescape's platform remains at the forefront of technological innovation, end quote. Shut up. 8K is dumb. I have written an article called 8K is stupid, or 8K displays are stupid. And I stand behind that article. They're like, oh, people are going to get bigger TVs, so they're going to start seeing pixels, so we need to be at 8K. You're never going to get a TV big enough for most people, and I say most, like 99.9% of the people, to ever see a pixel. You have to be so stupidly close to any display to see the pixels that you can't see the whole display most of the time.
Yeah, we worked it out right for the 3840 pixel width of ultra high definition. You got to have a what was it? It was a 64 degree field of view. I think it was something like that. You got to be close enough that it's feeling a 64 degree field of view. Which I mean, we know we've got some people out there who do like that type of field of view, maybe even bigger, but the vast majority of people would rather sit farther away.
Yeah. I have people arguing with me in real life on the regular that their TV is big enough. And I'm like, your TV is 12 feet away.
Yeah.
and
65 inches.
It's not, I wish. It's like 50. And they're like, oh no, it's I think it's just fine. I'm like, can you read the ticker at the bottom of the screen? Well, no, but that's just, I don't really care what's down there. That's not the point. What if it was something important? You'd have to stand up. And one person was like, listen, can I just move my couch closer and then you'll stop bugging me about this? I'm like, yes.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
Now, all of that said, I have no problem if Kaleidescape wants to start offering 8K resolution movies. I think out of all the services, they're the one that makes sense. If they can get 8K resolution source files from the studios and they apply their own compression to it and they've got the distribution already set up to do that sort of thing, then I've got no problem with them being the content source company that is going to provide the larger library of 8K. That makes sense to me.
And not only does it make sense, I think it makes sense for them. You know, and I think that their target consumer is the one that's going to be convinced that 8K is important. They want to have the bigger number, and they don't care how much it costs. They want that number to be bigger. Yeah. And if literally the only 8K content provider on the planet was Kaleidescape, I think that it would still make sense for them to do it.
It's them and YouTube. That's going to be it.
YouTube. I mean, come on. YouTube.
At the moment, you want to get some 8K content, like right now, YouTube is your only game in town.
Epson added a new model to their Q series of extra bright projectors, the QS100, priced at $5,000 in either a black or white chassis. It's the least expensive Q series model, and it's also the only ultra short throw model in the lineup so far. Rated at 4,500 lumens of both white and color brightness. The QS100 is definitely on the higher end in terms of light output for its price class, and Epson has equipped it with a lens that allows for images as large as 160 inches, which is larger than the focus adjustment provided by most other ultra short throw projectors out there. That 160-inch image can be produced with the back of the chassis closest to the front wall, only 14 inches away from the wall. So QS100 can be inverted and ceiling mounted just above the top edge of the screen, clearing the way for your center speaker to be below your screen where most other ultra-short throw projectors would usually go. As expected, it's using a similar laser light engine as the rest of the Q-series projectors, but its native 1080p LCD panels are more limited in their output capabilities than the rest of the Q-series long-throw projectors. They only wobble twice per frame, so you're not actually getting every pixel of 4K content actually shown on the screen. Therefore, Kaleidescape thinks it's garbage. And it tops out at 4K 60 instead of 4K 120. It does have Epson's ultra black technology, though, as well as Epson's newest dynamic tone mapping for HDR10 content that adjusts on a scene-by-scene basis. So there you go.
Yeah, so just a nice little addition to the Q series lineup. But yeah, I was a little bit disappointed because it's really tough to find an ultra short throw projector that is doing 4K 120. And I was kind of hoping that maybe they're just basically taking the guts of the QB1000 and then attaching that with an ultra short throw lens. That was my fingers crossed that was what was going on. But nope, not quite that. It is its own separate unit. And so yeah, this is the wobbling twice per frame, not 4 times per frame, or in fact 8 times per frame to give you the 120 hertz that the other Q series models can do. The LS11000 and LS12000 that remain in the lineup, they can also do 4K 120, but all of those are long throw projectors. So yeah, this isn't quite everything I hoped for from a Epson Q series ultra short throw projector, but it does have some niceties. For the $5,000 price point, it is very, very bright, and there's almost nothing else out there in ultra short throw that'll go above 150 inches. I mean, you can make the image bigger just by pulling it farther away from the wall, but it won't be in focus.
Right.
So this one actually has the range of focus to give you a sharp looking 160 inch image. So that is definitely larger than most other ultra short throw projectors. So still some compelling features, but not quite everything I was hoping for.
Yeah, 160-inch screen, though. I just don't... I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who have them and have speakers around them. But that, to me, that's the area where you should be putting all your speakers behind the screen, or at least your center channel. But, certainly this has applications. And, again, we've talked about 1080p and how for the... it's that dynamic... That HDR is really the most important thing, more so than the number of pixels that are on the screen at any given time.
And personally, I feel like Epson was pretty smart in, rather than trying to go head-to-head on sheer contrast against JVC and Sony, they're like, look, we're going to have very similar price points in this Q series to JVC and Sony's lineups, but at every price point, we are just going to be twice as bright as what those other companies are doing. I'm like, hey, that is a defining, distinctive factor, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
Emotiva has released their RMC-1 and XMC-2 Plus.
Yeah, RMC-1 Plus.
RMC-1 Plus. Mm-hmm. Well, it was the minus in front of the 1 that threw me off. It balances out. It's a
dash, but then a plus symbol.
Yeah. These are 16-channel pre-pros that they showed off back at CES in January, which is a very fast turnaround time for Emotiva. Priced at $5,000 and $4,000 respectively, and shipping in the U.S. only for now. The RMC-1 Plus and the XMC-2 Plus finally bring HDMI 2.1 support to Emotiva's pre-pros, just in time for HDMI 2.2. They've only been saying that HDMI 2.1 will be coming soon since 2020. Although there's no way of adding HDMI 2.1 to their RMC-1, RMC-1L, is that long? XMC-2 models. Those are all completely discontinued now. And if you want an Emotiva Pre-Pro now with HDMI 2.1, you either need to buy the 1 Plus, the RMC 1 Plus, or the KMC 2 Plus. I don't like saying all those letters, and I'm going to stop. I'm just going to say 1 Plus and 2 Plus, and you guys can figure it out.
That's the distinction.
So the $4,000 2 Plus, which is the least expensive one, that starts with an X, has a single front blue front display and 16 XLR pre-outs on the back that can be configured to 9.1.6. Or you can reduce the number of speakers and make room for as many 5 independent subwoofer outputs as you want, which we would never do, but whatever. It comes with a DRAC Live full license and a setup microphone, but despite being able to assign independent subwoofer outputs, there's no option to upgrade to DRAC Live bass control as of yet. Coming soon.
They don't even say that. And there's the Emotiva Pre-Pros are not listed on Dirac's own website because that's where they sell the upgrades. So if you look at all the models on Dirac's website, there's all the Arcam and the Denon and the Marantz and NAD and other ones. And it's like all of those have upgrades available for them that you can purchase directly from Dirac. But Emotiva, their pre-pros are not listed there, even though they definitely support Dirac. There's no upgradability in terms of the Dirac software.
Yeah. DTSX Pro is on board now, another thing that was coming soon for a long time, but never actually added to any other of the older discontinued models. Mm-hmm. No Aura 3D because they just waited for it to die. and then said, well, wow, we don't need it anyways. And not to worry, IMAX Enhanced support is coming soon on the new models. So be ready to buy another one in 5 years. So Emotiva Pre-Pro fans will have that to look forward to.
Because that is a requirement of being an Emotiva Pre-Pro fan, is that you are always just around the corner. It's coming. They said it's coming soon. You must be waiting with bated breath for the next
Why don't we have
feature.
cult-like followers is my question. What is it about us? Is it the science, Rob? Is it the science?
Defended them for so long. On the HDMI 2.1 stuff, on the DTS-X Pro stuff, and I'm like, that what you have owned for the past 5 years, it never got it. And they're going to do a whole trade-in program. Emotiva has always been very good about that.
Yeah, sure.
They're going to do a whole trade-in program, but it is going to cost you some money, and you have to get an entirely new unit. This isn't something that can be send your old unit back to the factory and
it's
they
a
upgrade
feature
it.
though, because now they not only get that, but they get other stuff.
Yeah.
With other stuff to wait on. So they have a whole new thing to defend.
Right.
I don't think I can have cult-like followers. I think that I just don't. I don't inspire that sort of optimism in people. Maybe you could, but Rob's much nicer on the podcast than he is in real life. I'll be honest with you.
It's true.
If you had him in real life, you'd be like, is he American? Maybe a little bit.
I have mentioned between the two of us, I am the much less forgiving. I am the much quicker to just write people off, and you're dead to me now. It's like Tom will work with people and work through things and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, no, it's you might have completely the wrong impression between the two of us.
All you people are like, well, I would like to work with Rob a little bit because I think Tom would be mean to me. Tom will be mean to you. That is true. But will
Tom
know
will
it's
also
coming.
Work with you. Tom will also work with you. I will just ghost you at the first sign of me not liking what you're doing.
So the $5,000 R1 Plus, that's what I'll call them. I'll drop the MCs because that's stupid. The R1 Plus has dual blue OLED front panel display. Why would you need two? What's wrong with just one?
Gotta have more info.
And around the back, there are 3 expansion slots. Not present on the less expensive X2 Plus. 2 of those expansion slots come pre-populated with Emotiva's Phono preamp module and their XLR balanced input module. Supposedly, the expansion slots, first seen on the RMC-1 without a plus model.
That's right.
We're going to allow the RMC-1 Plus, well, not Plus, to go beyond 15 speakers, but that never happened.
It did.
But it was coming.
Sure was.
And Emotiva is making no such promise with the R1 Plus. It's the same 9.1.6, or reducing the number of speakers to have up to 5 input subwoofer outputs, all being XLR. Stock is already low, as there were pre-orders in place. But if you've been waiting on HDMI 2.1 support from Emotiva, your time has finally arrived. All you have to do is give them more money and trade in your other thing, and then get on the something waiting.
Yeah,
no,
and just to be clear, the trade-in program is not in place yet. It's coming this summer.
Coming soon.
Promise. Pinky swear.
Coming soon.
So, just before we leave the news section, it's going to be too late by the time you hear this podcast, at least certainly in the audio-only version. But the Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders for United States and Canada, those are beginning on April the 24th. They're starting midnight April 24th in the United States. We have to wait until 12 noon Eastern Time, 9 Pacific in Canada. So we have to wait even longer than our U.S. compatriots. How unfair. But April 24th, Switch 2. If you haven't already pre-ordered it by the time you're listening to AVRant, it's probably too late.
The scalpers, right? Can we just all agree that they suck, like as a whole? Like they ruin everything. Like I don't necessarily blame people for wanting to make money in whatever ways they can make money,
right.
But the fact that they can make money this way is not because of them. It's because there are people out there with such FOMO and such a desire to have a thing that they will support them. Like I will not. Like there's no part of me that will pay extra for something because they're sold out. I'm just like, No. I mean, I didn't go to a concert because the fees on top of the concert, it doubled the price of the ticket. I was like, you've lost your mind. I'm not going to that concert. Yeah. I won't go. I'll listen to the album. I'm not doing it. I mean, 10%, 15%, maybe. But this convenience fee of me having to click all the buttons on the online, that's a convenience? You have lost your mind. It was a $30 ticket. It was going to be $60 for that ticket for all the convenience fees and stuff. I'm like, and it's at an outdoor event in Florida in August. Mm-hmm. I'm going to sit out there and sweat with a bunch of sweaty idiots? No. Comments.
So, just before, so if you miss out April 24th for your Switch 2 pre-order, then head on over to Nintendo.com because they will be selling it direct beginning on May the 8th. But there they are doing the restrictions I mentioned last week or the week before.
50 hours or whatever.
Yeah, you have to be a Nintendo Online member. You have to have a Nintendo Online account, and there has to be a record on that account. So, like, if you're just setting this up now, it's not. Well, I guess you still have time. Yeah, there has to be a record on that account of you having played at least 50 hours on a Switch 1. So that's their method of making sure that scalpers just can't go in there and order hundreds of them, because that would be difficult to do with that method.
Right, because they can't set up a bunch of different accounts. Right, because you only order one per account, I would imagine. Is that sort of the deal?
Yeah, one per account. Yeah, that's right.
All right, comments. John is in full agreement with us about damping and decoupling under subwoofers and speakers rather than spikes. But in addition to that, he highly recommends damping, decoupling, and something else, your seats. Obviously, you're outright instructed to do so if you're using tactile transducers that are directly attached to your seats. But even if you're not using any tactile transducers, he found that having his seats decoupled from the floor enhanced his experience of the deep bass being outputted by his subwoofers. It was like a subwoofer upgrade. He just used isolation pads purchased from Amazon, and since his couch has legs, he put the leg cup carpet protector on each of those isolation pads, and that was very effective in dampening the connection between his couch's legs and the floor. If you are really pressurizing your room, your couch will sympathetically vibrate.
That's right.
At certain frequencies. And some people go, ooh, my couch is vibrating. I like it. And some people go, stop it. You're distracting me. So John is clearly in the latter camp, and I don't have any problems with that whatsoever. I don't know that I would call that a subwoofer upgrade. But maybe if his couch was like actually making noise, as it was.
Well, and it's also just, when there is that sympathetic vibration in the couch itself, that would be getting transmitted into the floor.
Sure.
So, like, maybe you've decoupled your subwoofers and your tower speakers from the floor, but you're like, I'm still hearing, particularly at certain resonant frequencies, throughout the rest of the house when the bass goes off. And it's like, oh, you know what? It could be that the thing you're sitting on is vibrating sympathetically, and that's transmitting, particularly those resonant frequencies, directly into the floor. You decouple that, and suddenly the rest of your house becomes
John,
quieter.
I hate to say it, but you can't stop there. Everything that's in that room can and should be decoupled. If we're going that far, if you've got furniture in that room of any sort, like a stand, a bookshelf, or anything, it should all be decoupled. Now, if you have carpet in your room, could be that's enough for most of this.
Particularly for anything that does have a flat bottom rather than feet, because then you are spreading that force out over many more square inches, so pounds per square inch, that goes down when you just have a flat bottom on, say, a TV stand or an equipment stand or something.
Yeah. But, if you don't, start buying up those feet.
Foam pads are not expensive to put under stuff. So you could quite realistically do this without it costing an arm and a leg.
All right, questions here. Sasi. First up, Sasi said he will do his best to keep us updated on the project at his mother's temple. They seem to have slowed down with some delays, so it might be a while before there are any results to share, but he'll keep us posted. Those tariffs
all right,
really
thank you.
Slowing everything down. Mm-hmm. Second, he gave his pair of rhythmic subwoofers to his parents because he had plans in place to build a new pair of DIY subs for himself. He got as far as ordering the drivers, but then started a new job, and he's found himself with no free time to build his subs. Mm-hmm. Could that be one of the reasons Tom and Rob are not more enthusiastic about recommending DIY subwoofer builds for everyone, best laid plans and all of that? Yeah, and it sucks. I don't I mean, I am very, when you're good at something, you love to do it, and nothing will stop you from doing it. Okay. Or if you love something, even if you're not good at it, you will still work on it because you love the experience of doing it. People are like, I'm going to build subs because it's cheaper. You are not. I mean, you might, but they're going to suck. And it's going to, because you don't have any experience. You're like, I'm just going to power through this thing because I need to save the money. And, when I was in college and when I was younger, even younger than that, people are like, I loved riding my bike. I loved riding my bike when I was a kid. And they get a bike, like, I don't love riding as much. You have a car. When you were a kid, you did not have a car. This was your this bike meant a lot more to you than just the being a bike. You could get around. You had some independence. You already have that. So buying another bike doesn't make any sense for you. DIYing a sub when you are not a person who likes to build things, or even if you are, but you don't really like to do it that much, you don't do it just because you've got 5 free minutes and you're like, I'm just going to run out into the woodshed. Do you have a woodshed? Listen, a woodworking studio? I mean, do you have any of that stuff? Because if you don't, DIY is not for you. That's why I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it because people will buy the stuff thinking that they're going to do it. They'll take 3 steps into it, hit a little roadblock. And honestly, I got a new job. I don't have as much time. That is a little roadblock. That's tiny. It's a tiny one. And they will stop, and then they're stuck with all this stuff. From from our standpoint, like as if giving advice, we should be recommending DIY stuff because you're never going to finish it. And therefore, you will never complain about it because it's not our fault that you didn't finish it. Do you see how that works? Like if I suggest to you, you should go on this diet, and if you follow this diet strictly, you will lose a bunch of weight. You will not complain that you didn't lose a bunch of weight on that diet because you didn't follow it strictly. So therefore, I can keep spewing my nonsense because you'll never get challenged. That's why those people can keep changing their recommendations over and over again, because the same people who almost followed the first one will also almost follow the second one and the third one and the fourth one because they never really do it all the way.
It's a bit like the infinitely adjustable speakers. So it's like, no matter what, it's like, well, if you just keep at it and tweak it a little bit more, you're going to get the sound quality that you wanted. Yeah.
So whereas our recommendations are a lot more dangerous in that we say this speaker and this speaker, either one will be good. And you're like, and then you'll go home and if you do decide to get them both, because a lot of times we're like, they both have, they're free returns, and you put them next to each other, you can convince yourself that one is way better and that we're idiots. Whereas, because that's easy to do. But even that little bit of ordering 2 things at once, that's like, most people are like, I'm not going to do that either. So, I don't blame you, but this is why we do not, from my perspective, if you're like, I love to work with wood, should I build my own subwoofer? Absolutely. Out of all the speakers, that's the one you should build. Like, don't do the other ones because you didn't say, I also love to work with electronics and crossovers, and I understand what a capacitor and resistor and all these other things are. You didn't say that, but building a subwoofer is definitely something that people can do. All right, so he's got questions.
for Sasi in particular, finding yourself where you are now, I think his original plan was to make completely custom from scratch cabinets. But if you are now finding yourself with less time, but you've already purchased the drivers and have no intention of sending them back, this is where the drivers that you chose are pretty popular 18-inch Dayton drivers. Dayton themselves have subwoofer enclosure kits.
There you go. That's how you fix that problem.
The Marty sub kits also will fit those type of drivers. So it might be time to look at a kit which still gives you you're going to assemble it yourself, but it's a lot less work than the actually building it from scratch. So that might be my suggestion to you at this point. Look at the kits.
Yeah. So for his question, he wanted to ask about replacing the spike feet that came with his KEF R7 towers. They came with outriggers that you have to attach to the bottom of the speakers yourself, and then there are spike feet included that you screw into the outriggers to use to perfectly level the speakers. If you have hardwood flooring, they include some tiny metal discs that you put underneath the. I hate those things.
Yep.
He does too, since any minor slip can knock the spikes off the discs, causing floor damage. You see, that's your servant's problems. Your manservant or woman. I don't know what they call them. Women's servant. I don't know. That doesn't seem right.
I've never heard that term.
I've never heard it either. But manservant's definitely a thing. Yeah, that's somebody else's problem. So when he's gone looking for replacement feet that will isolate rather than couple the speakers from spikes, he always ends up with links to isoacoustics in their Gaia isolation feet. The KEF outriggers have M8 threads, and the ISO feet can fit that, but each set of 4 Gaia isolation feet is $200. That seems a bit much. So he came across rubber cone feet, but he questions how well those will isolate, and they also seem overpriced. But then if he just searches Amazon for M8 speaker feet, he finds lots of cheap options, but there's no way to tell if any of them are good or if they properly support the 65 pounds of each of his towers. He wants something that looks nice, will be safe on his hardwood floors, and works properly to isolate his speakers from the floor. Any suggestions? So, no one says you have to actually put the outriggers on. Let's start with that. There's probably 4 threaded holes in the bottom. Probably also M8s. They could be something else, but they're almost certainly the same thing that you could use instead of outriggers. I like outriggers. I know where you're going across that with that. There's no reason why you can't just take like something else that is an isolation foot, like the SVS stuff, and if that, I would imagine that's also, it's pretty standardized for these things to be the same thread.
Well, so I looked it up. So yeah, the SVS SoundPath subwoofer isolation feet don't only have to be used on subwoofers. They can absolutely be used on tower speakers, and they will be perfectly fine with the amount of weight that you're using there. So SVS does mention that by default they come with 1/4 inch 20 threads per inch. That's the screw threads that they come with by default. So that is a different size from M8 because M8 is in the metric version of it. But I don't know for certain. This is one where it would be easily worth a quick call or email to SVS to be like, hey, could you send me the SVS SoundPath subwoofer isolation feet, but with M8 screws instead of the 1/4 inch 20, because that might be something they can do, because they say that they try to make that SoundPath isolation feed as compatible with as many things as they can. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that they can just send you an M8 version instead of the default 1/4 inch 20. But if that isn't possible, it's easy enough to go to any hardware store and get a 1/4 inch 20 to M8 adapter, or just get some M8 screws as long as they fit through the openings that are in the SoundPath isolation feet. So yeah, that there is a way to make it work for sure.
And I don't know, where, obviously I don't know where you live or what you have available to you. Here in town, we have a place called, and there's the only place like this, Tri-City Nuts and Bolts, or hardware. I don't remember what it's called. That's all they do is hardware. So you can literally go in there, like, I need this to attach to that. And, take the outrigger in with you, and then have it, and they will figure it out and sell you whatever you need. Yep. And honestly, you might have to buy more than you want, but it's still going to be cheaper than buying literally anything from Home Depot.
And just standardized 1/4 inch 20 to M8 adapters are readily available and cost like a few pennies per adapter. So yeah.
So, going off topic from home theater, he was intrigued when he heard me mention that me and my wife prefer to travel without having booked a hotel, and made a bunch of sightseeing plans in advance. So, any tips and advice on how to travel in that matter? What it's like only booking a hotel after you arrived, how you figured out interesting things to do, and what to visit and see only after landing? And is this Tom's method for both domestic and international travel? Surely it has sometimes turned out better than expected, but it also must have felt like planning ahead would have been better sometimes, right? Any standout memorable moments from that? Listen, I have got so many both good and horrible
Okay. Let's not do all of them.
stories from traveling that's a completely different podcast that
Okay.
I could start and then continue it for 900 episodes.
Right.
So the downside for those of you that don't remember that or maybe didn't hear it, what basically my wife and I do not like to plan our trips when we go places. Many times, the most that we will do is the first night or two that we're in a different, especially if jet lag's involved, the first night or two that we're in a different country, we will have a hotel booked in the place that we are going to. We'll decide, like we'll know we're going here, like in like one city within this country. So we fly into that city, or we fly near, and then we take whatever taxis. We have a hotel room or whatever for the first night or two, and then from there we just kind of wing it. How hard is that? It's not very hard at all anymore. Now, has it not worked out for us in the past? It absolutely has. And will you benefit, especially if you want to see very specific things? Like if you're like, I'm going to Rome, I want to go to the Vatican, I want to take this tour, and I want to be able to do this one thing that I want to be able to do. And you have to schedule that in advance. So you have to do things like that. But for us, most of the time, we don't care about any of that stuff. Most of the things most of the experiences that we have that we talk about is not about the thing that we went to see, but how we got there and what the hardships or what the interesting things that
the journey more
happen.
than the destination.
That there's a reason why that's a saying.
Yeah.
So do we do that both domestic and international? The answer is yes. Now when my wife and I did that, it was really pre-internet. It was 1999. Okay. And we were flying, when we started, we were booking things in advance. And then I don't want to call it lazy. We just got more and more comfortable not booking things in advance. And by the time we had been through Italy, Greece, Turkey, which was easy because my wife's Turkish and we just went to her family's house. By the time we flew out of there and went to Egypt, we had one night. We had one night scheduled in Cairo where we flew into. And the first day we spent just going and finding another place, right. which worked out just fine. In domestic, nowadays it's even easier. While you're traveling, you can just look up Airbnb or Vrbo or whatever it's called, or one of these other places, or find a hotel as you're in transit to where you're going. Has weird things happened? Has interesting things happened? Yeah, we were in right before COVID, the summer before COVID, we were in Denver. My wife said, let's go to Boulder. I want to stay in Boulder. I want to go tour the University of Boulder, and maybe we could do some climbing or something. I'm like, that sounds great. So we're driving over. She goes, I found this place. It's got the listing's a little weird, but I found this place, and I'm like, okay, well, no, just book it, I guess, because we're only going to be here a couple of nights. Just book it. And she says, it's kind of outside of town, but it seems interesting. I am fairly certain it was a cult compound. Like it had that whole vibe, right? And
that is of interest.
It was like we drove into this place. I looked around. I'm like, where the F are we? And she's like, I don't know. So we're walking around. This guy's like, oh, the room's back here. And it was really nice. It was like he had to unlock it for us. And it was like kind of off to the side a little bit in this one big building. And there was like a cafeteria underneath with a big industrial kitchen. And above it, or to the side and to the same level, the second floor, there was like a shrine situation where there was a bunch of like things. He's like, oh yeah, these are artifacts from my grandparents and parents. I'm like, what? And then there was like a temple or like a worship center. I'm like, are we gonna die here? My wife's like,
it does make for a story.
I don't know. Like, well, let's just keep the doors locked. Nobody goes outside by themselves. It was great.
Okay.
He was very nice. There was nobody else there, so I think all the cult members were off doing culty things. I don't know what they were doing, but it was very strange. And, you know, that's the sort of thing that happens when you're like booking it on the fly. So, and that was here in the United States. I mean,
Okay.
we were right when we arrived in Siena after going from Rome to Siena. We got there, and the very first night we didn't have a hotel room scheduled because we thought we would just find one. And there was a conference in town, and every hotel room was booked.
Right. Yep.
And we were like, well, we might sleep on the street tonight, but we didn't. So that we stayed in a very crazy person's house, and they were like, "You're not sleeping in the same bed in my house." I was like, "Okay, I guess that's happening."
So yeah, like obviously, if it's like we're planning a family vacation, the whole point is to like visit Disneyland. It's like, yeah, you're going to want to book that in advance, right? It's like you wouldn't do that. You've got a very specific, this is the destination we're going and this is what we're going to do for 5 days. Then obviously I think anyone would know that you're going to book it. But
our plan for most things are to go and to experience the place. So if I was going to Canada and I wanted to go to ski, I would of course have to book my lift tickets or whatever beforehand, but I would not be booking like a horse and carriage ride and a hot air balloon or a tour of.
I mean, if you're coming to my neck of the woods, I will say book your seaplane tour in advance because you got to do the seaplane tour. It's fantastic and it's worth booking in advance.
But
so that would be
what we like to do is just kind of stay in a place for a week. We don't go and
actually interact with the people. Yeah.
I saw 15 countries in 14 days. Like, no, you didn't. You drove through them, and I can do that. Right. I could watch a YouTube video and do that. So we stay in one place we try to go for at least a week and just sort of experience it and get to the point where we feel comfortable kind of getting around. And then you start seeing you start noticing some of that, like, hey, there's a lot of people near this place, and that's how we find, interesting locals and all of that. You have to be very laid back and willing to deal with a little uncertainty, and some people don't. And when we are traveling with people like that, we let them plan everything. Like, you plan it, we're fine. Like, well, would you have an opinion? Nope, we don't have any opinion. Oh, do you want to pay an extra $500 to go on this? No, we do not. We're not doing that. We're gonna go. We're not doing that. We're gonna go to the beach. Nelson has a whole bunch of source devices plugged into his Denon X3600H receiver, and he's manually renamed the inputs on his receiver for his own amusement. So his Apple TV is called Beetlejuice, and that is how you say that's Beetlejuice, right?
Yeah, that's like the way the star is spelled.
Yeah, the star is that threw me for a second. His NVIDIA Shield is called Nova, and his Roku is called Krypton. He also got an R-Volution 4K network player, an Oppo 203, an Xbox, and a setup for plugging his UMIC 1 directly into the front of his HDMI port, into the front HDMI port of his receiver, so that's all dandy. His 77-inch LG C3 OLED automatically detected his Denon receiver, and HDMI CC worked well enough to let him use just the LG TV's remote to bring up a list of all of his sources on the TV screen. It didn't just detect the Denon all by itself, it could see through the Denon and detect the individual source device, and it even showed them on the screen with his manually customized names. But then something went wrong. Now, when he pushes the input button on his LG remote, only the Apple TV, NVIDIA Shield, and Roku show up as inputs he can choose. They still show their custom names, but his other source devices don't show up on the LG TV screen at all. Since they're all using the same HDMI input on the TV, he doesn't actually need to change the HDMI selection for the TV itself, and therefore he can use the Denon's remote to select the correct input on the receiver. But it used to work so much better, and he can't seem to find anywhere in the LG's menus to refresh what shows up as available inputs on LG's TV, on the LG's TV screen. Man, it really feels like you should just do a factory reset on the LG and maybe that'll make it work. Because that's the sort of thing that I would think that maybe they pushed an update.
Yep.
That would be my guess.
Yeah, that definitely is one method of doing it. When you do a factory reset, and it's very, just like setting up the TV as though it were fresh out of the box, one of the steps in that LG initial setup with any of their OLEDs is it will prompt you and say, hey, connect your first source device. Like, it's assuming that you're plugging everything directly into the TV. But, it'll say, connect your source device. It'll then look to see if it can download or control that device directly from the LG remote, like more than just power on, power off, and volume. Like if it can actually, do full functionality or as close to full functionality using the LG TV's remote. So it actually, detect the source device once you've plugged it in and then try to set itself up for as much automatic single remote control as it possibly can. So yeah, doing the factory reset, what you would actually want to do is plug all of your source devices into your Denon receiver, have all of the source devices powered on and ready to go. And then when you get to that prompt, plug the Denon, the single HDMI output from the Denon into the LG TV and work through all the things as it detects everything that is connected to that Denon receiver as you go through. So yeah, that is one method. But of course, the downside is if you've done any custom picture settings and things like that, then all of that will have been erased with the factory reset. You'll have to do all of that in the TV again. So the alternative that you could give a try if you're willing to, put a little bit more time into this is since you only ever want to use that same HDMI input on the television itself, temporarily unplug the cable that's going from the Denon receiver to the LG TV so that port on the TV is freed up, and one by one connect your source devices directly to the TV. Because for the ones that it isn't detecting right now, the hope is, okay, I plug in that Arvolution network player, now it detects it, now that it's been plugged directly into the TV, it does its automatic setup, and then fingers crossed, when you plug it back into the Denon receiver and plug the Denon back into that same port on the TV, it recalls when that Arvolution source is powered on. It's like, oh yeah, I remember having connected to that in the past and set up, and now it does that. So that might be a method to try without doing the full factory reset. But if neither of those works, if the factory reset doesn't work, if the plugging the source devices directly into that HDMI port doesn't work, then really, getting a universal remote at that point is the only other alternative. And we're still going to say, wait one more month, see if that Sofabaton X2 comes out. But that would be the only other way to go at that point.
Yeah. Whew. Ran back and forth to the kitchen while you were talking. Got more coffee. I was like, he can't see me. No one can see me.
I can't. I had no idea.
He had no idea. And I was like,
your mic is muting itself every time you're not talking. So there's like a moment when you start talking before I hear you.
Why is it muting myself?
It's whatever. It's Skype. It's terrible. Everything is awful.
This is great. Graeme says he's a longtime listener, but this is the first time sending us a question. He's got a fully treated and dedicated home theater, so that's where any serious viewing takes place. But he also has a small TV in the living room, and after 15 years, their little 35-inch... Jeez. I haven't heard a 35-inch TV in a long time. His 35-inch Panasonic Plasma finally seems to be giving up the ghost. So they want to get something new, and he wants the contrast and black levels to be at least as good as that old Plasma. Well, it's not going to be 35 inches. And they still want the TV to be small, though, and they've made the deliberate choice to not have the TV dominate the living room. And they've got the dedicated home theater, and and that's when they want the big image. Mm-hmm. So given the way TV bezels have shrunk, a 43-inch TV can fit just about perfectly where the 35-inch Plasma is now. And he's hoping he can just use the same Sanus extending wall mount that currently holds the Plasma. He doesn't want to spend more than $1,000. So they recommend, first of all, no TV mount that could hold a Plasma is going to have any problems holding anything else. Okay, because Plasmas, my dad was complaining because they moved into their new house this week. And he was like, you're going to need to come over here and help me move this Plasma. I'm like, I don't want to. It's heavy.
Yeah, that was glass on the front, not plastic.
Yeah, they're no joke.
To it.
I'm like, dude, you don't remember how heavy it was when that 36-inch Sony Trinitron that we had to move around. That thing was a beast.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a 35-inch Plasma is not the biggest TV that there ever was, but if your Sanus mount could hold that, it will have no problem holding a 43-inch LCD or OLED. Weight-wise, no problem whatsoever. So I have no qualms there. Now, if if we go exactly by what he said, then yeah, there's no world in which when you got used to a plasma, I'm recommending you anything other than an OLED. It's like if you want the same contrast and black levels, in fact, an improvement over what your plasma had, then it's going to be OLED, and there are definitely options that can work for you. So right now, the brand new 42-inch, so you said up to a 43-inch can fit, 42-inch should definitely be able to fit. The brand new C5 has just come out, but it's priced at around $1,200. But it means that the C4 from 2024, the 42-inch LG C4 OLED is on sale for $900 over at Best Buy right now. That is under $1,000. It checks all the boxes. In the 42-inch screen size, there was almost no difference from last year to this year. So it's not like you're giving up some massive improvement from the 2024 model versus the 2025. So that we know is going to work, and I have, absolutely no problem recommending it to you. The only thing I'll mention is you're like, okay, a modern day 43-inch with, a really, really skinny bezel is almost the exact same, front dimensions as the 35-inch plasma that had a thicker bezel. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're not willing to consider a slightly larger screen size. And I bring that up simply because LG's C4 from last year in the 48-inch screen size is $1,000 at Best Buy right now. So it's $100 to go up that 6 inches in diagonal screen size, which is very, very noticeable. But you said you've purposely chosen a smaller TV for the living room. You've got the dedicated theater when you want the big image. So maybe you really don't want 48 inches. You're like, nope, it'll start just being too big. But yeah, the 42-inch C4 can definitely work for you. That all said, if you're like 48 inches is not too big, maybe that's about as big as I would ever want to go. There was also the LG B4 OLED from last year, and that is only $550 at Best Buy right now. Now, there is no 42-inch in the B series. 48 inches is the smallest in the B series, but it's a 48-inch LG B4 for $550. If you are willing to go to that screen size, that's the one I would pick, because you're like, some people, the B series are the technically dimmest of the LG OLEDs. The C series is slightly brighter. I'm like, you're coming from a Panasonic plasma. The B4 is going to look spectacular to you. The plasma was nowhere near as bright as a B4 OLED. So just given the price, if you're willing to go up to that 48-inch screen size, and it has virtually no bezel whatsoever, $550 for that right now, that's tough to beat.
Yeah. They've just been using the plasma's built-in speakers, and will probably do so with the new TV as well. There's really nowhere to put external speakers in this setup. But if you were to get a small soundbar, could it attach to the bottom of the same TV wall mount that is holding the TV? And if so, what would we recommend? There are ways of doing this with just about any soundbar. There are brackets that you
brackets
can
that attach to that soundbar, attach to the swivel or the extending mount that you already have. Very inexpensive, like $21 is one of the ones from Amazon, and it's very simple. A lot of people envision that it has to use the same holes as the bracket that's attaching to the back of the TV, but that's not the case. You can attach the bracket that's going to hold the sound bar to different holes on the TV wall mount than the holes that are used to actually attach the wall mount to the television itself. So don't necessarily think that they have to go together.
Yeah, they're usually like a long bars that go across to accommodate different sized TVs.
That's right.
And there's usually extra holes just hanging out there doing nothing. So there you go.
Yeah, so you can attach that soundbar bracket. So you can definitely attach a soundbar, and it can go either below or above the TV with that attachment bracket. Yeah, so that is certainly doable.
Don't forget about that. Above is also an option.
Yeah.
And no, you will not think the sound's coming from the ceiling or whatever.
And as far as a recommendation for a soundbar to consider, because it certainly doesn't sound like they're wanting like a full surround sound setup or anything complicated like that. So first of all, I would say, okay, if you end up with that LG B4 or the LG C4, like give the internal speakers a try, because they might be satisfactory. I will say play around with the settings, because in particular, if you turn the Atmos processing on, I mean, yes, it's just two built-in speakers, so it's doing all kinds of virtualization, but it is a very audible difference between just the default settings versus having the Atmos processing turned on or the voice enhancement setting turned on. It's like, is that going to measure perfectly linearly? Absolutely not. But if the whole goal is I just want dialogue to sound clearer, I want to get some sense of spaciousness, it's like, give the built-in processing a try, because that might be sufficient. If it isn't, though, if it absolutely is, no matter what you do with the combination of sound settings built into the TV, you're like, no, it just doesn't sound good enough. My favorite simple sound bars to recommend right now are from JBL. In particular, I like the Bar 500. It supports all the things, even though it's a single bar. What I like is that it actually has genuine left, right, and center drivers with separate tweeters. You don't find that in a lot of sound bars, to be honest. And it's really nice having that actual dedicated tweeter and woofer driver for the center channel. That's something I definitely look for in sound bars. Now, right now, it's not on sale whatsoever. So over at Best Buy, it's at its full retail price of $600, which is probably a little bit spendy, but I have definitely seen it on sale for $500 or even $450. So I would kind of just wait for a sale on that JBL Bar 500. They also have another model, though, that is smaller that I don't think sounds as good, but it sounds better than a lot of built-in TV speakers, which is JBL's SB580. Again, what I like there is that it actually has separate left, center, and right drivers with actual tweeters for all three of those channels. So that goes for only $300. They sell it directly from JBL. It's out of stock right now, so on either of these things, you might be waiting a little bit. But yeah, the SB580 is an alternative, but in both cases, JBL is my go-to for that single soundbar type of setup these days.
Kerry has an LG C1 OLED connected to a Marantz SR6011 receiver and a 5.0, sorry, no subs, speaker system. Apology not accepted. They mainly use a Roku Ultra as their streaming source. I also don't have a sub right now. And even if one arrived on my doorstep, I'd be like, I'm going to put it in storage. But they've been getting annoyed with Roku lately. There are more and more ads, so he's been considering getting an Apple TV 4K. Well, I am also annoyed by ads. The thing is, he already owns an NVIDIA Shield Pro. He's strictly been using it as a Plex server. Could he put it into use as a streaming playback device without it messing up his Plex server functionality? And if so, would they be just as happy using the Shield Pro as their streaming device versus an Apple TV 4K? I mean, those are the two top boxes I would recommend for streaming anyways.
Those are the two top boxes.
So yeah. It's there. Try that.
Yeah. Well, I can see he's like, wait, if it's already set up as a dedicated Plex server, is that going to mess it up if I try to use it as a Plex player as well? Is it going to be able to server to itself? I can totally see asking that question, but it's fine. It's totally fine to have it acting as both Plex server and player. Being that it runs on Android, it's got access to all the streaming apps. So yeah, I would absolutely give it a try because you already own the thing. You don't have to spend anything. Now, it's possible that you look at the Android interface that's on the Apple or on the NVIDIA Shield rather, and you're like, still too many ads, or I just the icons I actually want are some of the smallest icons, and all the icons that I don't want are all bigger and more prominent. It's yeah, that's kind of true of that interface at this point. Maybe it's not going to be completely satisfying. The Apple TV 4K doesn't have ads on its primary interface, and all of the icons are the same size, and you can just manually order them in whatever way you want. So in that way, if you're I just want to get away from ads, then the Apple TV 4K is going to be superior that way. But the other side of it is the NVIDIA Shield is 100% the best player for Plex.
Right.
If you want to get completely lossless audio, including lossless Atmos and lossless DTS:X from Ultra HD Blu-rays that you've backed up onto your Plex server, then the NVIDIA Shield is the only mainstream streaming box that lets you get that full lossless, including Atmos and DTS:X, out of there. The Apple TV 4K in its native Plex app will not output lossless audio, and if you use the Infuse app instead to play back things from your Plex server on the Apple TV 4K, it can give you lossless up to 5.1 or 7.1, but not Atmos or DTS:X. So there's a limitation on the audio side there, whereas the NVIDIA Shield has no limitations. It's completely perfect as far as audio output goes, and the Plex player on the NVIDIA Shield has its own frame rate matching. It's not the system settings on the NVIDIA Shield. It's in the Plex Player app specifically, just applying to that one app. Does perfect frame rate matching on there. So I would definitely give it a try. You already own it. But yeah, if you hate the interface, you hate that there are ads, and there are ads on it, then yeah, the Apple TV 4K is the one that doesn't have ads.
There you go. His front three speakers are Ascend Sierra 1s, but the center speaker isn't being utilized right now. He's running a phantom center because the center speaker output of his Marantz kept cutting out. He has thoroughly cleaned it inside and out more than once, and the receiver is not going into protection mode. He suspects there's a faulty solder joint inside, because if he wiggles the center speaker terminals on the back of the AV receiver, sometimes the center speaker will still work, but only for a little while. He can't easily access the terminals inside the AV receiver himself, so he isn't 100% sure. The Phantom Center is okay, but it would be nice to use his actual center speaker again. Would it make sense to get a little Fosse amp and use the center speaker pre-out from his SR6011, or should you just start saving up for a new receiver? I mean, that would work. As long as it's not something else, that would definitely work.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this sounds like I would try for a repair first, because if it's like, oh, I can wiggle the binding post on the back and it works for a little while, but then it sounds like becomes disconnected again. I'm like, that sounds like just some kind of connection inside that has come loose or desoldered. And if that's all it is, that can definitely be repaired. So I would look into that. If you have no idea about any repair shops anywhere around you, just contact Marantz, Denon, Sound United, Massimo Consumer at the moment. They're all the same thing. But just contact them. They can point you to an authorized repair center. I think that's worth looking into. But if you just want to give a little Fosse amplifier, and I still like the TDA 7493E, $70, 80 watts per channel, runs nice and cool, that could be worth a try. But if there actually is some problem, like in the entire center channel signal chain, and it isn't just a loose connection, then the pre-out might have issues too. But that'll be readily apparent very quickly. So yeah, that's the way I would approach that. I wouldn't immediately be looking to replace it, because that sounds like something that's repairable for sure.
One would think it still might be cheaper just to buy a Fosse amp, and
it could be. Yeah,
the repair could be more expensive.
Yeah, because that Fosse, like I say, it's only $70.
Yeah.
So.
Ray is using a Denon X4700H receiver to process a full 7.2.4 speaker configuration. Since the 4700 has only 9 amps built in, that means he needs at least a 2-channel external amp. And ever since he first expanded to 11 speakers, he's been using an Onkyo M5000R, which used to sell for $2,500 back in 2011 when it came out, and was rated to deliver 80 watts into 8 ohms, doubling to 160 watts into 4 ohms, and it could be bridged to act as a monoblock. It was previewed by me way back then, and in the article, and Ray has been using it to power his front pair of PSB Image 6T Tower speakers. Mm-hmm. It's a very good looking amp. Recently, he bought an AccuPhase E4000 integrated amp. It's rated at 180 watts into 8 ohms and 260 watts into 4 ohms. He is replacing the Onkyo amp with this AccuPhase integrated amp, and he'd like some guidance for us. Okay, my guidance is to not replace it. Because it feels like a lot of, because didn't sound like it was broken, so let's do with that.
It does not? No.
Since the AccuPhase has a volume knob, which the Onkyo amp did not, and the AccuPhase has multiple inputs on the back and more settings that can be adjusted than the Onkyo amp had, what's the best way to swamp these two amplifiers and ensure he's getting optimal performance from the AccuPhase now in place? I would sell the AccuPhase and just leave the Onkyo in there. I'm sure he's got a reason for doing this, and I hope the reason is the Onkyo is not working properly, because that's the only reason I would accept.
I'm betting he just saw the higher wattage number and figured that's got to be better. But
yeah.
Who knows?
So
who knows? I don't
here's
know.
what I'm going to tell you before we start. If you notice an audible difference, like a sound quality difference between the Onkyo and the AccuPhase, you've done something wrong. So let's just start with that. These things should sound exact. Well, it's got more amps. Who cares? My gas pedal never goes to the floor, which means I've got more headroom on my car than I ever actually use. Therefore, what? If I got a faster car, I would not press the gas pedal quite as hard. That's exactly what's going to be happening here. So if you're doing this because you want the more watts and the more headroom, it's going to sound exactly the same. So if it doesn't sound the same, then you have done something wrong in this. So how would you normally, I've written an article about this. I can't link it because every time I touch anything on this desk, it makes a huge sound that goes through the microphone. I'm trying not to touch
it.
anything.
It sure does, yeah.
But I can't link it. Maybe Rob will find it when he does his show notes.
Sure.
But I wrote an article about how to do an integrated amp, use an integrated amp as a dumb amplifier in there, how to integrate an integrated amp into your home theater setup. I don't remember what I called the dang article. I'd have to go find it. But so what you would generally want to do is turn the volume knob up on the integrated amp, or to the amp with a volume knob, up to, if it has like a 0 dB setting sort of thing.
Right. And this one does have a readout, like it's showing it in the promo photo, like set to -18, but that indicates that, you can actually see the readout on the front there, and you would set it to 0 dB. It probably has some plus headroom above that, but 0 dB on that should be the unity gain. That should be the no extra gain being applied to the signal, but no attenuation of it either.
Right.
The 0 is where you would start for sure.
So for other amplifiers that do not have this readout that you can see, or doesn't have a volume knob that has a line on it that says this is, I don't know, you would just turn it up. You would plug your speakers into it, not play anything through it, turn it up until you started hearing noise through your speakers.
A hiss through the tweeter, the noise floor.
Then you would turn it down until you stopped hearing that, basically.
You'd back it off until that noise floor goes away at your seating location.
Yeah.
We're not talking about I'm 1 inch from ear to tweeter. Almost any amplifier will have a very faint hiss no matter what you do. But from your seat, you shouldn't be hearing an actual audible hiss when, it's just sitting idle, nothing is playing. If you're hearing a hiss from your tweeters, you turn the volume knob a little bit down.
Then for you, or for any other, if it's got any sort of tone controls or any sort of adjustments to the signal, room correction, anything like that, you want to defeat every bit of it. So
turn all of that off.
It's all got to go off. And if it's got a direct or pure direct or something, things that we would normally tell you never to turn on, this is the time to turn them on. You want to make sure that
all you want this thing to be is an amplifier. Nothing
and then
else.
you never touch the volume knob again. You never touch the volume knob. You never touch it again. It just, if you have a 12-volt trigger that you can use to turn it on from something else, or you just integrate it into your Logitech or whatever, a Sofabaton universal remote system. That's it. You never touch it again. It just does this. And
you just do the left-right pre-outs from your receiver to the line 1 input on the back of the AccuPhase, and that's all you need.
Choose that source, and Bob's your uncle. So that's right. That's how it works. Infinite Gary. First up, Gary just wanted to comment on the super resolution setting that is offered on LG OLEDs. When we recently went through a bunch of LG OLED settings and gave our recommendations for how they ought to get set, just remember that it was all Rob, not me. We said to keep super resolution and any of the other AI enhancement type settings turned off, and for 4K content or even good quality 1080p content, he tends to agree. But here it comes. He watches a lot of live sports via cable TV, and some of it looks pretty dreadful in its native form. He's found that adjusting LG's super resolution setting on a case-by-case basis can definitely help those lower quality cable TV feeds look a lot more pleasing. So he does not dismiss that setting out of hand, and LG offers low, medium, and high options, so it's not an all-or-nothing scenario. In any case, he finds it useful, so he just wanted to share his 2 cents on that. So if you are also annoyed and Canadian and watching low resolution cable TV sports feeds, apparently at Gary's house, he will set it for you to something that makes it look better to him. So there you go.
No, I am very okay with that. That is exactly what those type of enhancement features are there for, is low resolution, low quality, already filled with macro blocking and posterization and all kinds of other problems. Like, that's in the source. That's not the TV's fault. The TV's just showing it as it is. It's like, yeah, okay. The AI enhancement stuff, the super resolution, it's like, the reason I don't like having it on by default is because occasionally it creates artifacts. Occasionally it creates mistakes that aren't supposed to be there. And if you leave it off and you're watching good good quality content. You don't need that stuff. But yeah, absolutely, I would probably take it's artificial sharpening, artificial edge enhancement, artificial dynamic contrast, all those types of things. But it's like when the source signal looked really, really crappy and like weak and fuzzy and it's not fun to watch at all. It's like, yeah, some of these things are great. That's exactly why Artings in their recommendation says, yeah, you tune these things to taste, right? It's like if all you're watching is stuff from your VCR, you're probably going to want to turn on super resolution. So I'm all in favor of that.
And I think that you should watch it in its terrible resolution, not do anything to fix it, so that you can have more motivation for your rage when you email or text people and tell them, say, hey, how come your stuff looks so terrible?
There's that too.
I'm a purist when it comes to my video sources. I want to see it in all of its awful glory. Gary has chatted with quite a few video calibrators, and he's had several different professional calibrators work on his various displays throughout his house over the years. For his main theater room with his Runco projector, he learned that the DCI standard for SDR is a peak luminance of 48 nits or 14 to 15 foot Lamberts. Which one is it? 14 or 15?
Well, because
choose one.
Nits when you translate it lands a little bit in between 14 or 15.
14 point what?
Yeah.
But when he's had his own projector set to that standard, he's still found it ever so slightly too bright for his liking. He reminds me of somebody. I'll tell you the story in a second. He does not like the sensation of wanting to squint even slightly. So through personal experience, he has landed on having his projector set to output 11.5. So there are decimals in your world. 11.5 foot Lamberts for peak white rather than 14 point something. Unknown number. So as he understands it, his preferred image is now under-illuminated, technically speaking. What does that actually mean for his perception of the image? Is he missing some detail in some way? If so, what detail is he missing? How best to understand what is really going on perceptually if peak white is set lower than the industry standard? When I was in college, first in college, I was in drama, and I was asked if I could do lights for a production of King Lear. And it's a very big production. And I said, yes, of course I can do lights. I had no idea what I was doing. But what I did know was that there was this dude that I knew who did lights, and he was around. And every time they told me to do something, I would say yes. And I would go find him, and he would tell me how to do it. Within a very short period of time, I knew enough to get things done, and it was fine. And then I was operating the lighting board, and the director would call down from, call up because I was up, call up from down below me and say, Tom, can you ever so slightly lower the light output, just a little bit less blue? And I would say, okay, let me know when. He goes, right there. And at first I would actually do something because he asked me to do something, and I would do it. But then he would ask me to undo it later. So eventually what I did was I just said, let me know, and I just sat there and waited for him to say, that's it. And I feel like that Gary is that person. Like, just sit there. He's like, well, just lower the, I don't want to squint at all. And he's like, okay, how about now? Yeah, that's better. It's perfect. What is it? 11.5? Oh, 11.5. Okay, I'll write that down. You write it down. So, yes. Gary, what are you missing? I don't know. Nothing, or maybe everything. You'll never know because it doesn't make any difference because you're never going to turn it back up anyways.
This is easier to define if it is HDR. Because HDR, they went with a whole new system where the signal level could be matched exactly to a specific number of nits. So when we're talking about tone mapping, which is taking a signal that's, say, from 0 or 0.005, I think is the minimum in HDR, up to, let's say, the standard 1000 nits. It can go brighter than that, but let's just use that range. But then you're showing out on the TV where the maximum light output that it can manage is 700 nits. then it's going to say, okay, in the HDR format, for the first 50% of that signal, which is the value from 0.005 up to 100 nits, we're going to follow those values exactly as they're supposed to be. This signal level is exactly this many nits, and that's what we're going to do. But in the top half of the signal from 100 nits up to 1,000 nits, it's like, well, this TV tops out at 700. So we're going to have to remap that. We're going to have to tone map that so that if we want to see the detail or as much of it as this TV will allow us to see, we've got a choice here. One, we could follow the signal exactly. And when we get up to 700 nits, that's it. We just chop off, and everything that is above 700 nits is all just the same shade of white. And that's clipping off the signal, and that's one option. The other thing we could try to do is do that tone mapping and say, okay, what is 1,000 nits in the signal? That's now going to be 700 on this TV. And then we're going to have to compress that range from 100 to 1,000 nits to fit within just 100 to 700 nits. And that means a little bit of detail. Some of the steps, if you showed a pluge pattern, if you showed every distinct shade of gray up to white, some of those are going to merge together because we just have fewer steps. We got a bigger signal than the TV can actually show, and we're going to try to fit that bigger signal into the smaller number of steps that the TV allows. So that's how that works. You'd lose some of the very, very fine shading detail in between some of those steps along the way. HDR is easier to understand that way. In standard dynamic range, you didn't have an exact, this signal level means exactly this many nits. We had this gamma curve, and you could slide that curve up and down. And in fact, on the bottom end of your Runco projector, it's a DLP projector. It's a nice projector, but black is not literally black. It is always showing a dark shade of gray when it is supposed to be 0 nit black. It can't reach 0.005 nits. The darkest it's ever going to get is like 0.2 nits or 0.1 nits or something like that. That now becomes your black level floor. And if you want to see the very next step above that and the next step above that and all of that low level shadow detail, you have to slide the entire gamma curve up a little bit so that, 0. I think in standard dynamic range, it was 0.05 rather than 0.005. So it's like 0.05. It's like, well, that now we have to slide up that curve to like 0.1 or 0.2, whatever the actual black floor of your projector is. And then similarly on the top end, if you're not going up to the 14-foot Lamberts and are instead topping out at 11.5, we've had to compress that whole curve down, right? Because if we had raised the black floor, then normally we would actually raise the peak white as well. The whole thing would just shift along that gamma curve. But you've now truncated the top end as well. So similar to what we were doing at the top end of HDR, where we're trying to go from 100 to 1,000 nits, but we're shrinking it down to fit, between 100 and 700 in my example that I gave. Now we've lifted the black a little bit so that it's in line with the actual native black level of your projector. And then we've truncated the peak white. So we've compressed that entire gamma range into a smaller amount, which means that steps along the way somewhere, we're on a pluge pattern that's showing every step of the 256 steps in an 8-bit signal. It's like some of those are just getting compressed together. Your, one step apart is not going to be perceptual anymore. There's going to be a little bit of compression there. So some little bit of detail, mostly at the top end, the white clouds or things like that. Some of that is just going to get compressed together, and a little bit of that highlight detail is going to be missing from your image now.
I have nothing to add. Alan.
Okay.
Alan has had a Sofabaton X1 for a while now. He was backer on the Kickstarter of the original project. Recently he got an email from what appears to be an official Sofabaton email address. It said that in recognition of his long-standing support of Sofabaton and to show their appreciation, they are offering him the opportunity to upgrade to the newer X1S model for free. But the method described seems like a giant red flag to him. They said they use a provided link to purchase an X1S from Amazon, and then send them the Amazon receipt, after which they'll reimburse them for the full purchase price via PayPal. That doesn't sound
I know.
super
that would throw
legit.
up a red flag for me. Yeah.
He would have assumed this is a straight up scam, but he carefully checked the link in the original email address of the sender, and it all appears to be legitimate. So he wanted to ask us, have we ever heard of Sofabaton doing this sort of thing? Is it at all possible that this is legitimate? I don't know. Rob?
There is a possibility this is legitimate. Pretty much all of the YouTubers and influencers and that who posted reviews of the original X1 and the X1S, this is the method by which Sofabaton got them their review units without it costing money out of pocket, in that it actually did kind of cost money out of pocket at first, but then they reimbursed people through PayPal, and by all reports did so quite quickly. Within a day or two after getting the Amazon receipt, people, they as long as they supplied a legitimate PayPal address, they were getting reimbursed for the full purchase price. So Sofabaton has done this sort of thing via this type of methodology. Now, I still wouldn't just click the link in the email and do this. But what you can do on Sofabaton's own website, which is just sofabaton.com, they have a live chat. Use that live chat through their website. Double check that this is a legitimate offer coming from them. But this isn't one where I would just immediately throw it out, because, yeah, I mean, absolutely, this sounds like red flags all over the place. I would be super suspicious of it. But I know for a fact they have done this methodology for getting people review units without it costing the reviewer money out of pocket for more than a day or two. So yeah, there's a possibility this is real, but use that live chat, confirm it with Sofabaton directly.
Brian is finishing a media room, family room in his basement, and that's where his 5.2.4 home theater setup is going to go. He'd like our help in planning the electrical circuits. He'll be using a 77-inch LG OLED with a Denon X3800H powering all 9 speakers itself, 2 subs, and then various source devices. His initial plan was to have one electrical circuit dedicated to all of the home theater equipment, and have a second separate circuit that would handle the rest of the wall outlets and his basement family room plus all of the lights. But should he have more circuits than that? Does he maybe need a dedicated circuit for his 2 subwoofers all on their own? And you saw a recommendation on Martin Logan's website to install a dedicated ground wire that all of the AV circuits share, rather than just having each run of Romex terminate back at the electrical panel for ground. Is that a good idea? Is it necessary? So what they're talking about is ground loop hums is what they're worried about here. And that's the concern with having multiple circuits. So if you have everything on the same circuit and that circuit is grounded, then you don't have to worry about ground loop hums in any way, shape, or form. And everything is plugged into the same thing. So if every wall outlet in your theater is all on the same circuit, then you don't have to worry about anything. So what sometimes will happen is people plug into different outlets, and then things aren't grounded properly or aren't grounded at all, or they're on 2 different circuits, and that can sometimes be a problem. That's why they're saying having a single ground loop running back rather than a single ground wire running back instead of multiple ground wires. If your house is properly wired, this should not be an issue. They're talking about you've got this house from the 30s and it's still got paper wrapped wire in the walls and nothing is properly grounded.
Or there was a long stretch of time where it was normal building practice for when you were grounding things, you just attach it to the nearest pipe.
Right.
And that there was nothing wrong with that at the time. It wasn't like people were being super lazy back. Like, that was the common practice of how you do things, but it isn't anymore. So that's why older houses, they were built properly at the time, but they wouldn't be up to modern day code. And you can have these differences in ground potential because the various outlets in your house they just grounded them to whatever water pipe was closest by.
So what, if you're having this room set up, I don't think it really matters. It's, you're running new power. It's going to be properly grounded. Shouldn't be an issue. Do you need more circuits for more things? Well, that comes into how much amplifier power are you going to be pulling? Oops, sorry.
And also how much expansion ability is available in your electrical panel, because upgrading your whole panel, that's not a trivial thing.
Right.
That's a big expense to upgrade the whole panel.
It's certainly not worth it in most of the cases. So, you're talking about a basement. Sometimes basements are huge, and he's like, oh, it's going to be a media room / family room. Well, is there going to be a media room / family room that's essentially the size of the most of the square footage of your house? Because in which case, you're going to need big subs. They're going to be pulling a lot of power, and maybe they do want their own circuit, if at all possible. Maybe even 20 amp circuits. Who knows? It really depends. But most room, like it's a reasonable size room, you don't need to have separate circuits for everything. You don't need to have, extra power outlets that are dedicated or even high power, because you're going to buy one of those monoprice or APC amps that have 2 cords that come out the back of them, each requiring a dedicated 20 amp circuit in order to get enough power to them to power your, line array Macintosh speakers that can do 170 dB at 50 feet away or something.
Yeah, I mean, like it sounded like he's planning to power everything off of one AV receiver, so
yeah.
That shouldn't be necessary. One thing to keep in mind is like when you get the new electrical circuit breaker, like most of them are the circuit breaker that has 2 15 amp circuit breakers on it. Like that's just one unit that'll plug into your electrical panel, but it has 2 15 amp circuits on it, 2 individual breakers, and they both don't trip together. They trip independently, but that is one electrical circuit. That's not 2. That's not 2 electrical circuits built into one plug. That is one electrical circuit that just has 2 separate 15 amp breakers on it. So if you installed 2 of those, because each of those breakers can have a maximum of 12 outlets or 12 lights or 12 lights and outlets combined. Each of those breakers can have it. So you can have like on one of those plugs that goes in up to 24, like by code, that's what's allowed. Usually you want fewer than that. But if you're installing 2 of those, so you're actually going to have 4 things that can trip, 4 15 amp breakers that can trip, 2 physical plugs that go into your electrical panel. That should be sufficient for any typically sized basement family room, including one that's going to have a home theater that isn't going, crazy. And it doesn't sound like you are because you're powering all your speakers off of an AV receiver. So that should be sufficient, because then you can have, only the lights go on one of those 15 amp breakers. You're probably not going to have more than 12 pot lights in here. So only the lights go on one of those 15 amps. A group of wall outlets goes on the other one that's attached to that, and then you've got 2 more 15 amp breakers, and those go to 2 more sets of outlets, or maybe 1 more set of lights and outlets or something like that. That should be sufficient.
Yeah, keeping the lights separate is always a nice idea because of dimmers and fans and
any hum that might happen.
Because a lot of times that's where these noises come into our systems. So having the lights separate from everything else, I think, is a good idea. But then, having one side of the room be on one breaker and another side of the room be on the other breaker, I don't really see this being an issue as far as, ground loops and that sort of thing.
And, like by code, in older code, the electrical panel was only required to have 1 more plug available, which would give you 2 of those 15 amp breakers, but just 1 physical thing that plugs in. By code, in the older code, all you needed was 1. These days you're supposed to have 2 available. So if you're a more modern house, there should be at least 2 places so that you can have 4 more 15 amp breakers installed. But if it's an older house, there, like I say, the electrical panel, there might only be expansion for 1. And that might be pushing it a little bit. If it's a large family room in a basement, it's like, between lights and outlets, you might have more than, or be right up to 24, and you can't go past that by code. So keeping in mind what your electrical panel actually allows.
So we'd welcome our suggestions for power protection and or battery backup. He doesn't have any intention to try to keep his whole home theater set up running during a blackout, but he would like to protect his gear and have as few problems as possible. What do we recommend? So I just got the Cyber Power. I don't think that's the one I got. I got that's right here.
It could be the CP1500 PFC. That's the one I recommended to you. Or yours was a slightly different model number, right?
Yeah, mine's the GX1500U.
Okay, well, yeah, so that was the gamer version of it that had a slightly different LCD display.
Yeah, the reason why I got that one over the one that he's recommending is because Best Buy did not have the one that he's recommending, and
Amazon versus Best Buy. Yeah,
they did have the gamer one though, which was exactly I think the same price as what he's the Amazon one this year.
Yeah. So so that CP1500 PFC from CyberPower, that is sort of my top choice right now. $220 over at Amazon. It's a similar price for the gamer version at Best Buy. So this one is giving you 12 outlets total, 6 of which have battery backup, 6 of which are surge only. But yeah, this is pretty much all the protection that you might need for a home theater system, and not a ridiculous price. Now, if you are like, I don't like that it's by default a vertical tower. Yeah. There's no problem laying this thing on its side and laying it horizontally, but it just means the LCD readout on the front is now going to be, turn 90 degrees and maybe not look quite right. They do have a horizontal version of it, although the horizontal version, which is rack mountable, has fewer outlets. It has 8 outlets total, but all 8 are battery backup.
I will say it doesn't have the GX version of this has vents on both sides. So
right. Okay.
While you could lay it down, you're laying it down on top of half the vents.
Might want to give it some little feet so that the air can get through. But yeah, the horizontal version, which is just the CyberPower CP1500 RM for rack mountable, it's quite a bit more expensive, $335 over at Amazon, just to give you that horizontal form factor and fewer outlets total, but all 8 of its outlets are battery backup. So I just mentioned that because sometimes the form factor is like really, really important to people, and at least there is a horizontal version, but you'll have to pay more for it. Now, for any other devices, because this is not a just home theater dedicated room that you're talking about. If you still want some battery backup, but for cheap, and this is not power factor correction, supplies, you're just plugging other items into it, that might be nice to have a battery backup. I have no problem recommending Amazon Basics uninterruptible power supply. This one also has 12 outlets total, 6 of which are battery backup, 6 of which are surge only. This is not meant for high power amplifiers or anything like that, but like sometimes you got a Wi-Fi router, right? You've got a modem, you've got, some other device, Philips Hue Hub or something like that. It's like, it'd be really nice to have some battery backup, but I don't need to go overboard. $76 for the Amazon Basics one. I'm like, that's so close to just being a regular surge protector type of price that I'm like, yeah, why not have 6 battery backup outlets? They've got a whole series of Amazon Basics battery backup units, but yeah, I like that 12 outlet one. I think that's the best value that they offer. And then if you just want something you can plug your subwoofers into, I never recommend plugging subwoofers into any type of battery backup. And if I'm going to have a surge protector protecting my subwoofers, I want one that lets through the full 15 amps, just in case. I don't want one that's going to truncate the current that can go through the surge protector that my subwoofer's plugged into. So APC, the one that's modern right now, is the P8T3. That's part of their Surge Arrest series. It's kind of big if all you're plugging into it is a subwoofer, but it's one that has the full 15 amps that go through with very nice, adequate, high joule surge protection, and it's only $36. So you're absolutely not breaking the bank with that APC P8T3 to protect your subwoofers if you want to, and the full amount of current can go through that one to power your subs. No battery backup, nothing special, and like I say, kind of a little bit big for just a sub, but some people really want that protection, and that's a perfectly decent, affordable unit.
Most subwoofer manufacturers want you to plug directly into the wall anyway, so
that's right. Yeah,
really, all you have to do is make sure that you're not throttling the power. We're going to skip the next question.
You probably
yes.
Oh, okay, that's what we're going to do.
We'll do Henry real quick, and then we'll leave.
Gotcha.
Henry has a JVC NP5 projector, and he's using it with a 120-inch screen. How do we think it would fare if he were to get the new Kaleidescape Strato M player, which can output HDR but is limited to 1080p instead of 4K for resolution? Are his JVC's NP5's upscaling capabilities up to the task? Can it multiply by 4? And let's just imagine that the Strato V player somehow came down to the same $2,000 price point as a new Strato M. Would that make it a no-brainer? Would either of us purchase one at that price point? I'm never purchasing one. It's just never going to happen.
And I mean, I was considering the Strato V at the full $4,000 price point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if the Strato V came down to $2,000, I would probably get
two
one.
kids in college and one kid is a sophomore in high school. So yes,
Right.
I am $2,000 to $4,000 for a player is not in the budget for the foreseeable ever. So yeah.
But I am definitely considering that Strato M because that's all I need. And actually, Kaleidescape did a nice little software update that applies to both the Strato M and the Strato V, where now on the main dashboard, you don't have to go in the Kaleidescape store. On the main dashboard, it'll show you all the movies that you own, right? Everything that you've purchased from the Kaleidescape store, whether it is actually on the local storage or not, because both of these devices can hold about 10 movies. That's if you've done the 1080p download on the Strato M and done the 4K download on the Strato V. The hard drive sizes, the Strato M, the hard drive size is half the capacity of the Strato V, but if you're only downloading the 1080p versions, you can fit about 10 on each of those. So before, the native interface would only show you the ones that were in local storage, the movies that were in local storage. And if you wanted to see everything that you've ever purchased from Kaleidescape, you had to go into the store and go into your account, and then you could see everything that you've ever purchased. But now, right on the main interface, they've done the software update where it's like, here's all the movies you've ever purchased, and then, these are the 5 to 10 that are currently on your local storage. Anything else, you'll have to erase something and download it. But it's nice. That's a nice quality of life feature that they've updated. So I'm very much considering the Strato M because I'm like, yeah, I will take 1080p with HDR and full lossless immersive audio over 4K without HDR. Give me the 1080p with HDR. I'm like, I think I'm going to be okay with that for $2,000 instead of $4,000. So you, with an NP5, yes, it will upscale that beautifully. The NP5 has JVC's full frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping, so it is well worth having HDR. And I'd be very happy going with a Strato M. I know there's going to be some people going like, but the JVC, the NP5, it's native 4K resolution panel. I'm like, yeah, it's going to upscale that perfectly fine. Like, I'm sure you've watched some Blu-rays, right? Just regular Blu-rays, or something from Apple Movies or something like that or streamed something that was in 1080p, not 4K. And it's like, it looked fine as far as the resolution, right?
Yeah.
It's like the HDR is the thing that's going to make the bigger difference, and now you can have that. So I say go for it. I think the Strato M is a nice cost savings, giving up very, very little.
So who do we have left?
Sebastian had a nice lengthy question. It's going to be big and in detail. He's got diagrams and everything. Apologies that we didn't get to it this week, but Sebastian, we will answer you on the podcast next week. You'll be first up.
All right. I want to thank our listeners of the week. I want to thank Bill for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 133 patrons at patreon.com, including Michael.
Yeah, Bill, thank you very much for that PayPal donation. And patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go if you want to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thanks to our 133 patrons over there. And Michael, thank you for being one of them.
So thank maybe the same, maybe different Michael who wrote to RSL.
I believe it was the same.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was the same.
Good.
Michael.
Michael for writing to RSL and talking us up, as well as Justin for sending in a bunch of movie codes for us to test out. Thank you.
That is right. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Justin. We really appreciate you thinking of us and shouting us out to RSL and sending those movie codes. Very nice of you.
We also got notes of gratitude from Nelson, Kerry, Graeme, Alan, Brian, Sebastian, Henry, and Sasi. Thank you for thanking us.
That is right. I'll say the names one more time. That is Nelson, Kerry, Graeme, Alan, Brian, Sebastian, Henry, and Sasi. Thank you all very much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We definitely appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.